Hello and welcome to my IGOR album tutorial. Today I'm going to be showing you how to recreate this style of album using just a couple of things in Photoshop. It's quite easy to do, and to get something like this, the main things we are going to be needing to be doing is just some text that we can generate ourselves. But to start off with, what we want to do is just create a 2000 by 2000 grid. Here you can see that the resolution will be 300, usually keep it to that. Anything else in the thing, just keep it. Press create and we'll get with a new empty thing. Now, as you can see here, we are wanting to get this sort of style of pink. So we just use the eyedropper tool. Pressing I will usually do the trick. And if we use the magic wand tool to select all of this after unlocking the background, we can just fill and select foreground color, as you can see down here, and press OK. Now you have the pink that, resembles something that of IGOR. Now, using my own face for this, I will be showing you guys how to actually make this. So first thing we're going to do is rasterize this. The rasterization tool is pretty much just to make sure that an image you place can be edited and adjusted by elements of Photoshop. So you can move it around freely and just select on image and adjustments. You have something called desaturation, which is what we're going to be using to turn this into black and white. Now, to get this sort of really dark effect, or in my case, due to skin color, I'm using something to darken my skin a little bit more. We're going to be using things like exposure and brightness and contrasting just to make the effect similar enough to it. First thing we want to do, go to adjustments and go to brightness and contrast. So here we can play around with the levels for what you want, but usually keep contrast as high as possible just to make sure you have a good contrast of black and whites, and turn the brightness down depending on what you want, but make sure you don't block out anything too much and you still keep some facial features notable, such as mouths, nose and eyes. So for here I'm choosing around 33, 35, and then we're going to be just looking around, seeing what it looks like, and potentially going to be adjusting something further. Now, what we want to be doing quickly is just removing the white background. Obviously there's many ways of doing this, but the way I'm doing it is using the lasso tool, magnetic one at least, because if you have a white background, it just quickly selects all of the areas that aren't white, and you can just quickly select your face or whatever section you've decided to use for this album. So we can just copy and paste this and delete the old photo. You can obviously clean up any other little imperfections later, but right now we're just going to be going into exposure just to edit around with this. What we want to do is change the exposure to 2, just to give you a contrast of really bright whites and really dark darks. And for offset, we are going to be wanting to put it at a minus 0.07 to give you that sort of solid black and solid whites, or highlights, shadows, and some midtones, hence the sort of grays that we are having on here. Now what we want to do is select inverse this and copy and paste so we can add a gradient later on. So what we want with this gradient is just sort of to create some sort of shadows of it. So if we just create a new layer down here and we inverse it again, we go to the gradient tool, select black and white as the 2 colors in foreground and background, as you can see down there, and holding down G, we just sort of play around with the contrast. We have different types of gradients, such as circular ones, or this simple pan one we are going to be wanting to use, but there are other things such as the circular one, this more complex one that not many people use for things like this, and others, but for the moment we are just sticking with a simple pan. Edit the angle of light that you want to hit. I'm going for this more angle here, and we use multipliers just to put the 2 together, but not to actually merge them yet. So if we hide this one, we will be able to see that we can get this effect with the eyes. So what we want to do, using the polygonal lasso tool, we want to remove the eyes. So just press and just click around the eye or the section you want to remove. We can just backspace to remove it. We click on a layer and do the same with the other eye. Press backspace, and now we have removed our eyes, and it gives us sort of creepy sort of ish look, or more dead look that we can sort of achieve with this. So now to get this sort of color halftone area, what we want to do is we want to select the gradient and we want to go to filter. Well, first we need to select inverse this, always remember. And as for the gradient, the color halftone will be affected by it, so you will need to play around with the gradient beforehand or after. So with it selected, we'll also remember to change all these stuff. I know is easy to forget sometimes when you're starting out, but changing this is necessary. So if we go pixelate color halftone, we have things just a radius and all these channels. With the radius, you just want to leave it as 5, and it's just the spacing between each of the thingies. And for the channels, leave it all at 45 to keep it all even. And obviously, as you can see here, we have some bits that are covered, some bits that aren't. So now we're just going to have to reapply the filter just to get the thing. So if we just come back, pressing Command Z or Control Z, select the inverse again, re-edit the gradient so we cover a lot more of the thing, of the face, go back to pixelate color halftone, just press OK again, and now you can see the whole face is covered with the little halftone effect. Which, obviously, this close-up doesn't look very good, but it doesn't really matter. And obviously here we have the sort of color halftone going over the eyes. If we just use contiguous, which just selects certain sections of it, we can just select both eyes, holding Shift and clicking. We can just erase these, and we've removed the halftone effect from it, so it gives a nice contrast between the eyes, the background, and the actual face. Now we've merged both of these, we can see, obviously, now we just have one image. We go back to adjustments, and we go back to exposure and brightness and contrast. We can't just play around and see what sort of effect we want. Obviously, the effect I was looking for with this one is to make my skin dark as possible with some highlights and some facial features. So you just got to play around with your own face or your own object that you're using, and you should be able to get something. So I'm just playing around here with these, and this is the sort of level I'm trying to get to. Just increase the contrast a little bit more, play around with it, decrease or increase the brightness, but this should be fine. Alright then, and now what we're going to be looking to do is getting this sort of squared off section. For this, I use rulers and guides, which you just press Command R or Control R to get this little box effect, and as you can see in the navigator here, this is the effect we want. So if we go to new guide layout, we check the margins, so we make sure that's all ticked, and we put the top, left, bottom, and right as all 4 centimeters. With this, we'll be able to have guides that we can just lock into and cut off. What we want to do is just resize this using the Move tool and Command T to transform. And with the moving around, we can just edit this to be just about the same size with some offcuts. Now we press the rectangular marquee tool. We are able to just cut off the bits that we don't need. So now that we cut off the bits that we need, we can just mess around with it, resize it again, cut off some more stuff, and just play around with the composition that we want to do. But we want to keep most of the figure within the square boxes. You can go back to the polygonal tool and just cut off any of the sort of fuzzy edges or sort of curved edges, because we want something that's quite sharp. Obviously not so much on the face, but for clothing and everything, we want it to look like a cardboard cutout or a newspaper cutout. Obviously here I did make a little bit of a mistake along the ear section and some of the hair, so I will be removing these and making it look like it's just cut off. Always remember you're working on the same layer, otherwise you will end up with this sort of issue where you just end up messing up other layers unintentionally. So we remove these little white bits and fuzzy areas that we don't really need. Obviously at a distance it can look a little bit different, so it doesn't have to be that exact. Now, for this bit of the ear, we just have to sort of guess. It doesn't have to be too precise, obviously, as the whole nature of this cover was not meant to be that. So, with this now more or less looking a little bit better, we will be moving towards sort of getting the text in. Now, I've created my own text, but you can use literally any font you want. But for this purpose, I created my own. So we just rotate this little text section right here. We go to adjustments and we go to threshold, which will pretty much turn it just black and white. And you can see here with different levels will affect the amount of it you have. Go back to the magic wand tool and we untick contiguous, so it selects everything that's white, which is what we need. It will just give us the black text outline. So we remove the white and now we can just reshape it using the transform tool or Command T. And we just sort of reshape it and resize. Now for the layer, you kind of want to keep it just above the center, or at least in the first third of the little bottom section of it, just to try and keep some level of organization within your composition. Obviously later on you can change it depending on what you want. But to sort of get this sort of effect, or how they did it in IGOR, which is what we are aiming to do, we have text in this sort of size. So to add this sort of type of text, which looks more like a computer written one, you just want to press T for the text tool, and you just type it out. The font we're using is Courier, and the size of it you can obviously play around, but always remember to have it center aligned. And as you can see up there, you have the Courier, and this is the sort of layout that it's looking like in the navigator, and you can just change around and play around with the settings. You can even change fonts if you need to, if you aren't looking to do your own ones, but you can check for that yourself. Keep all the settings the same, the size of it doesn't really matter, you can play around with that later on. And always remember to keep it center aligned, just to make sure that you have some sort of central sort of focus on your composition, and it all looks sort of more or less symmetrical. Move around and play around with some of the areas and just sort of make sure that it looks all good and it just sort of fits. And that should be it. Save your work real quickly in whatever you want. I'm calling my one test IGOR 1. Just save it somewhere where you know you're going to find it, and just press OK on that. Now for this bit, you see we have some glitch and some noise. Now these effects are kind of easy to do. They're just very quick things you can just do. But to sort of create some of these, to sort of create a sort of noise effect that you can see on here as well, all you need to do is just click on your background layer, go into filter, and noise, and add noise. Here you're going to want to stay around the sort of 9%, but you obviously can go higher depending on what you want to do, but about a 9, 8 or 7% usually works quite well. I'm going to go with an 8 for this one. Make sure it's monochromatic as well, so it just gives you like a grayscale of the pink rather than just gives you random colors. Now you have a little bit of a noise in the background, which gives a little bit of texture and a little bit more organic feel to it. Now for the glitch effect, all you need to do is just use the marquee tool, and just sort of using the move tool, which is V, you can just move around. Hold shift to keep it in line, so whenever you move something, just hold shift, click, and you can move it in line with the thing. Obviously you don't need to do this, but just for the purpose of this tutorial, we will be using this. But as you can see here, we can just move it up like that to make it look like it's just pieces falling apart. We can apply the same thing to the text, where we just slightly move it offset, so it looks like it's been distorted, but not entirely illegible. And we do a little bit at the top as well. And with this, we should all be more or less into the effects of how we want the thing to look. Obviously, you can play around with what you want, so you can add a couple more lines if you need to. Always remember to work in the same layer. And as you're messing around, obviously you can re-edit, reshape, and just press Command Z whenever you need to, like undo anything. And with that, you should have something similar to the IGOR album. Obviously, you can play around with your thing, but this should be it. Thanks for watching.